Hello, everybody. How is everybody doing? Today, we're going to have one of our very, very important classes, one of our last classes, and we're just going to wait 1 second for everyone to show up. Give me 3 seconds to set up the audio, and we're going to make sure that everyone can see me and hear me. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Okay, I think everybody can hear me. I'm just checking the volume, you guys. Can you hear me okay? Okay, so I see that some people are already connecting. I see Koos from South Africa. We've had classes before. I see Erva from Turkey. I see Kalipan. Hello, Kalipan. I see Yunbin. Excellent. Hello from South Korea. That's awesome. I have a lot of students from South Korea. I have students from all over the place. So it's great to see you guys. And it's great to see that some of you are already connected. Today, we have a very important class. We're going to give general tips about grammar, okay? Because this is one of our last classes here on Cambly Live. For those of you who have followed along, we want to thank you. It's been amazing. Hello, Samar from Palestine. Excellent. Go Palestine. So I see also people from India. Go India. Divyesh? Yes. Awesome. So tell me, you guys, how have you been doing? How is your morning? We're just going to wait 1 or 2 minutes for everyone to show up. And while we're waiting, let me remind you guys, we are studying grammar today. We're going to give the top tips for grammar, okay? Our top tips are very general. Many of you already know that I have given you classes about SVO, grammar structure. So all of you probably know that very well by now. I don't want to bore you with the same thing again. So today we're going to focus on general things, okay? General things in grammar. And we're going to make sure that you get the opportunity to ask any questions you have, to express any ideas, all right? But like I said, we're going to go along with grammar. I can't really hear the notifications, you guys. Can you hear me well? Can you see me well? Give me a thumbs up if you can. I see some people saying that, I see Divyesh says that they have exams, so good luck with your exams, Divyesh. That's awesome. I see Antonio from Brazil. Thank you, Mbin. Thank you, Samir or Samir. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. I'm sorry. Mehmet. Excellent. Awesome. So let me just adjust my volume one more time. Okay, I think that's good. Awesome. So I see all of you are already giving me the thumbs up. So we're going to begin, you guys. All right. Today we're going to be talking about top tips for English grammar. Just as a reminder, my name is Cuau Guerra. I am a tutor on Cambly. I've been a tutor on Cambly for a few years now, and I love it. It's great. I've had the opportunity to meet some of you guys. Some of you guys have taken my classes. And some of you guys already know that I focus normally in my classes on advanced English teaching. Today, we're not going to focus on advanced teaching exactly. We're going to focus on general things that can help you with your English journey, just so that you can study, you can review, you can help your friends, you can do your homework, you can take your exams. So these tips are going to help you in general, no matter what your level is. These are good reminders to review English grammar and some strategies that you can use to develop your English skills, okay? So as I was saying, my name is Cuau. It's a pleasure to be with you guys once again. And we're going to start with the obvious one, clauses. So what do you guys think a clause is? Do any of you guys know the definition of a clause or how we use that or anything like that? This to me is very, very important just because I love teaching SVO. Like I said, some of you guys already have taken my classes or seen some of my videos. So you know that SVO is a very, very, very important thing in English teaching. But what do I mean when I say clauses? Does anybody know what it is? Can anybody give me an example of a clause? I'll give you guys a few seconds to answer. Okay, so I'm going to wait a little bit. In the meantime, I'm going to see who else showed up. I see Kother. I see Gamza. Awesome. Thank you, Kuz. I see Shelly Lova. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I see Hidayah Muhammad. Awesome. So Erva says that a clause is a group of words that includes a subject and a verb and forms a sentence or part of a sentence. Kalipan says 8 clauses. Not sure what he means. So Erva already gave us a very good definition of what a clause is. It's usually the connection between a subject and a verb, and it forms the basic structure of a sentence, right? Normally, the way that I teach clauses is with SVO. If you haven't watched that video, we're going to link it down below. Go watch it. Actually, I'm going to look for the link right now so you can save it right now. But a clause is basically the structure or the basic structure of a sentence, okay? Let me just copy this link here. I think you guys are going to be able to see it in the chat. So the basic structure of a sentence is very useful because it can guide our ideas and it can usually inform how we should build a normal sentence, how we should make the basic structure. DVS also says a unit of grammatical organization and in traditional grammar said to consist of a subject and a predicate, right? So it's SVO basically. The reason I mention this is that a lot of people forget that a sentence can have 1 clause or 2 clauses or 3 clauses, and technically it can be unlimited. I say this because some people think that the key to a good English level or the key to good sentences is to make really long, complex structures. And that's just not true. Sometimes a clause is all you need, okay? You just need to keep a very simple structure, keep SVO in mind, and as long as you form the right sentence structure following SVO, following the formula, it's going to be perfect, right? Kalipan says a clause is a constituent or phrase that compromises a semantic predicate, expressed or not, and a semantic predicate. Very good. Very, very good. So Sammer says simple and right. Exactly. SVO, keep it simple. In a normal sentence like I eat cake, it's just 1 clause. SVO. I, the subject, eat, the verb, and cake is the object in this situation. So we always want to follow that guiding structure to help us make simple, understandable, clear sentences. So always remember your clauses. All right. Now, something that I think a lot of people forget when we're speaking English or when we're learning to speak English are very simple things. Believe it or not, some people have issue with plurals. What are plurals, guys? What do you remember? Or what do they mean? How do we use them? How do we say them? Tell me, what are plurals? And we'll explain a little bit. Okay, says Ian Win from Vietnam. Awesome. Welcome, Ian. So plurals. Does anybody have any trouble with plurals? Do you forget plurals sometimes? This is closely related to clauses. I say plurals because a lot of people, when they're making sentences quickly, sometimes forget if they should be speaking in the singular or the plural. For example, a lot of people say, I like something, let's say something simple, books, right? So a lot of people very frequently will say, I like book. That's incorrect. But why is it incorrect? Well, in that sentence, if I say I like book, I'm saying one book. So I'm speaking in the singular, right? Now, that doesn't really make sense in that context because when we're speaking in general, we always use the plural. So if I'm talking about something I like, something that I enjoy, something that I don't like, I'm speaking in general. So I would use the plural. A lot of people forget to use the plural in the right situation. Please never forget to use the plural because it sounds really wrong. Okay. You always want to use plurals when you're speaking in general, and you always want to remember that if you're speaking about something specific, you should say something singular. You should say it in the singular form. Right? Also, be aware that you're not always speaking in the singular. Sometimes, when we're talking about day-to-day life, we can mention things in plural. For example, I ate 2 plates of spaghetti. You know, obviously, I'm adding a number, but plates is in the plural. I'm not saying I ate 2 plates of spaghetti. You see? So you always have to be careful that the singular or the plural matches the context and matches your grammar. If not, it's going to be incorrect. Okay? So Irva says plural means more than one, and a noun is a word used to identify something, right? For example, Desi says, I like chicken meat, or I like chickens. That's a very good example, Desi. So when you say I like chicken, you're referring to the meat, usually in the uncountable form. In the uncountable, you don't need to use a plural, right? But if you're talking about the animal, like dogs or cats, you would need to use the plural. Is that clear? Are there any questions there? Summer says, what is right to say, 4-star or 4 stars? Good. That's a very good question. So the right way to say it would be 4-star. It's kind of tricky. The reason is because when we're usually saying 4-star or 5-star or 3-star, we're using it as an adjective, not as a noun, you know? So if I go to a restaurant, I can say, hey, I want 3 hamburgers, or I want 3 cupcakes, or I want 3 something, right? And in that case, the object is plural because we're talking about a thing, multiple hamburgers, multiple cupcakes, multiple whatever. But if you're saying 3-star hotel, for example, what is the object that you're talking about? It's hotel. So when you say, I am staying or I will stay in a 3-star hotel, you're not talking about a plural. You're just using 3-star to talk about the hotel. So 3-star is just an adjective of hotel. It's not the object that you're referring to, right? So no adjectives are ever plural. Red, big, beautiful. We never use adjectives in plural. We never add an S. The noun can be plural, but not the adjective. So, for example, if you say, I will stay in a 3-star hotel, hotel is singular. If you use the plural, you're talking about different hotels, not different levels or qualities of the hotel. For example, you could say, I'm going to Europe and I will be staying at 3-star hotels, in the plural, all during the whole trip, all of the vacation. Or you could say something like, I will stay in 5 3-star hotels. In that situation, I'm talking about 5 different hotels, even though they are all 3-star level. Okay. Is that clear, you guys? Any other questions about the singular or plural? Information, pence. Okay, I don't understand that question. Shilova, I would need you ask that question again. Summer says, okay, awesome. So let's go to the other thing that sometimes we forget, and it's really necessary to remember. Okay, pronouns. Now, for some reason, pronouns is a scary word for some people. I think a lot of people get it confused, and they don't remember how to use them, and they don't really understand why we need to change them, etc. So, what are pronouns, you guys? What do you think of when I say pronouns? Or can you give me an example of a few pronouns? Keep them coming. Like I said, I'm going to wait just a few seconds for everyone to participate. But remember, you're all here. You can all participate. Even if you don't know, you can ask. And if you do know, you can help all of the other students that are here, and you can obviously guide them. So Caroline Mariotti says, whom, that, which. Are those pronouns? What do you guys think? It's a little tricky, and that's, again, why a lot of people get them confused. So, why Reem said beautiful. Okay, Desi says, I, me, his, her, she, they. Tricky. That's a little different. So, what do you think, guys? Kalipan says, pronoun is a word or group of words that one may substitute for a noun or noun phrase. Koos says, a word that is used instead of a noun, which has usually already been talked about. For example, the word she, it, and mine are pronouns. Desi says, which is a relative pronoun. Hisan says, he, she, it, they. Okay, so there are many different types. Well, not many, but there are a few types of pronouns, okay? We mainly use 4 pronoun types. Subject, object, possessive, and reflective, yes. So that was the one that was said by someone. Let me catch it. Desi said relative or reflexive, okay? Those are good, correct. However, it's very important to distinguish that they are not necessarily a substitute for all types of things, okay? They are a substitute for a noun when, especially or more frequently, when we are referring to a person, okay? Everything else is just it. Third person singular, it. So, the problem is that a lot of people forget that there are different types of pronouns. So, like I said, we have subject pronouns, we have object pronouns, we have possessive pronouns, and we have reflexive or relative pronouns, right? The most important ones are the first, subject and object, okay? The subject pronouns, do you guys remember what those are? Remember that we can usually describe them as first person, second person, third person, etc., in the singular, right? And then we also have the first person, second person, third person in the plural. So do you remember what the pronouns are? The subject pronouns are, sorry. If not, I'm going to help you. Okay, I'm just going to give you guys a few seconds, see if any of you know it. Farjana says, substitute for a noun. Antonio Colosi says to refer to ourselves or others, exactly. So Desi says, I, you, he. Right. So the subject pronoun, there's a list. I, you, he, her, it, we, us, them, Daniela says. Thank you, Daniela. Good. Subject pronouns, there's a list of subject pronouns. I, you, he, she, it are the singular, right? And then we, you, they are the plural. These are all subject pronouns. This means that we can use them only at the beginning of a clause, only as our subject, okay? So for example, I can say, I eat cake, you eat cake, she eats cake, they eat cake, etc. That is the subject of my sentence. But I cannot say I love he, or I love she, or I love we. That would be incorrect, because in that context, I need an object pronoun. Okay. So the subject pronoun obviously goes in the subject category, in the subject formula. And the object pronouns obviously can go in the object formula, the end of a phrase, the predicate, the one that receives the action or that complements the action or information. The object pronouns are me, you, him, her, it also, us, you, and them. Okay? Me, you, him, her, it, us, you, them. Yes. Okay. So those are objects. Those can receive the action or be used in the object of a sentence. Okay. For example, I love you, I love him, I love her, I love us, or I love them. In that context, that is correct. So subject pronouns always in the subject, object pronouns always in the object. Okay. That's why a lot of people confuse them. Now, apart from the subject and object pronouns, we also have the possessives, right? Which are kind of tricky. That's a whole nother lesson. We have the lesson on possessives in our channel. But remember, subject and the object pronouns are the most important, okay? And if you want to talk about the possessives, they're things that are owned by someone, like mine, yours, his, hers, its, ours, yours, theirs. Okay. For example, Desi says, I give you a book. Exactly. I give you. So I is a subject pronoun. You is the object pronoun. Okay. Erva said, perfect. Erva, great example. Erva says, she is talking to her. It would be incorrect to say she is talking to she or her is talking to her or anything like that. It just doesn't work. The subject pronoun she, third person, singular, female, a woman, she, right? That's a subject. And then the third person, singular, female is her as an object. So she and her. Very good, Erva. That's excellent. Now, speaking of all of these subjects and objects and things like that, I want to remind you guys of word types, what some people call parts of speech. Do you know the parts of speech, guys? Or do you know the word types? If you've taken my class before, you know that I usually emphasize 4 main word types. Via says he gave a piece of bread to it. Good. For example, it could be a dog. It could be another animal. Excellent. Excellent, Dinesh. Right? Or it could be a machine or something. Desi says noun, verb, object. You're close, Desi. It's not exactly that. Not exactly that, but very, very similar. Summer says subject, verb, object. That's also very close. But actually, Summer, when I say subject, verb, object, I'm usually referring to the SVO formula in the clauses. The word types or the parts of speech are something a little bit different. Okay. When we say SVO, we're talking about grammar functions, right? When I say word types, I'm talking about the specific word and their characteristics. So it's a little bit different. Kalipan says nouns, pronouns, adjectives, verbs, adverbs, prepositions, conjugations, and articles, determiners. Right. So that's part of the reason why I don't personally like to teach parts of speech. There are different opinions, and some teachers and some schools will teach it differently. Linguistically, in English, there are 11 or 12 real parts of speech, but many schools teach 8 or 9, depending on what school you go to. Some schools teach 7, and they are basically the words that compose a sentence. So things like an article, a verb, an adverb, etc. Those are all parts of speech. They are not exactly the same as a grammar function. Okay. For example, a noun can be a subject or an object, but the word type is noun. Right? Same thing with a pronoun. For example, some people categorize pronouns as a type of noun. Right. So the reason that like I said, I don't say parts of speech very often is because it's a long list and it can sometimes be kind of hard to remember. I want to emphasize word types, okay? And specifically, there are 4 very, 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 very important word types that you usually can't escape. If you understand the 4 main word types, you can already make a sentence, and you're going to notice that they're very frequently used. Of course, aside from the 4 main word types, there are other parts of speech like articles, determiners, that are also useful, but I don't think they're the main aspect or the main building blocks of English. Okay. So the 4 main word types that I think are the most important are noun, verb, adjective, and adverb. All right. I'm going to write that down for you guys just so that you remember noun, verb, adjective, and adverb. Okay. Like I said, it's not because they're the only word types. It's just because, in my opinion, it's worth it to really understand and memorize these 4. Okay. When I say memorize, I mean really understand them and be able to identify them really quickly. Okay. Divya says, yeah, I know about that. Schools teach for marks, but other teachers from private centers teach differently for speaking. Yeah, something like that. It really does depend on the style. There are a lot of preferences and a lot of teachers and a lot of teaching programs that do things differently. Okay. So I want to emphasize noun, verb, adjective, and adverb. Okay. So if you can memorize those and if you can use those correctly, you're going to be great. Okay. Now, speaking about word types, and we're getting into the grammar part of things, something that a lot of people forget, believe it or not, are tenses. Okay. This happens a lot to some students from specific languages, for example, Chinese. Mandarin doesn't use tenses the same way that English does. There are other languages that don't use tenses the same way that English does. So very frequently, I get a lot of students trying to communicate using right words or, general ideas that I can understand, but they're completely forgetting the tenses, right? So they forget to speak in the simple past, for example, and that's terrible. You should always remember what tense you're using, why you want to use it. Whatever tense you choose, it could be correct. Okay. So I'm not saying that there is one perfect tense. In general, the simple tenses are the most useful and they're the most commonly used. You can use other tenses, but you do have to remember to make a decision, whatever decision you want, but you have to choose some tense. You have to choose to speak in the past. You have to choose to speak in the present. You have to choose to speak in the future. Whatever tense you want, but make sure that you're choosing it intentionally and that your clause is following the grammar correctly. Okay. For example, it says the cat and the lady are playing with a red ball. For example, what tense is that? The cat and the lady are playing with a red ball. What grammar tense is that? Kalipan says present. That's not so correct, Kalipan. Actually, there's a little difference. Hang on, let me turn this off. Right. Correct. Carolyn says present continuous. Perfect. Exactly. DVS says simple, present, past. Okay, so DVS is telling us several tenses. Past, present, continuous, present, past, and future, perfect tenses, etc. Very good. So Hiloko says future, Summer says present continuous, Irva says present continuous. That's correct. Okay. That phrase the cat and the lady are playing with a red ball is a sentence in the present continuous. Okay. So if you want to use present continuous, that's awesome. However, do you need to use present continuous? In my experience, for example, some languages like Turkish use the present continuous very frequently and very unnecessarily. Okay. So you don't need the present continuous all the time. You don't need the present perfect all the time. You don't need any verb tense all the time. The verb tenses that I really, really recommend are simple present, simple past, and simple future. That will be enough for 80 or 90% of your communication needs. Okay, good. Now, speaking of tenses, I'm going to go with the nightmare of many English speaking students or many English students, the present perfect. Can anybody give me an example of the present perfect? Do you guys know what the present perfect is? Sammer also gave us an example of the present continuous. We're going to the gym next week at 9. Awesome. Desi says, I have a question. Okay, I'll answer that in just a moment while we finish the present perfect. Okay. So Desi says, I've read a book. I have done. His son says, I have done. Okay. Any other examples, you guys? Can you give me any other examples here? He has been playing with his dog since morning. Divyesh, that is not a present perfect, actually. That is a present continuous. It's a correct sentence in the present continuous. But you see, that's what I was saying. You have to always remember what tense you're using. Whatever you choose, it could be okay. But you have to choose it intentionally. And you have to choose it carefully. Okay? Shaloa says he has a car. Also, not present perfect, guys. Desi says you have worked at Cambly for 5 years. Correct, for example. Kalipan says John has taken Sarah's advice. I have finished my homework. Someone also said that. Exactly. So the present perfect tense is kind of difficult sometimes. And, your comments are showing that some of you don't really remember how to use it or what it is. And this is a very good reminder that you shouldn't use it if you don't need to. Okay, a lot of people think that using present perfect is better. A lot of people think that if you use present perfect, you're going to sound more eloquent. You're going to have a better English level. That is completely false. Okay, do not use the present perfect or the past perfect if you're not 100% sure how to use it. Most of the time, you don't need it. Most of the time, what you want to say can just be said in the simple present. The reason I say that people shouldn't say it is because people overuse it sometimes. And it becomes a little unusual. It becomes a little weird. The reason is, like I said, even though obviously native speakers use it, because the present perfect is taught as an advanced grammar tense, or many people learn it in their advanced classes, they think that it's better. They think that the present perfect is sort of more formal or something like that, and that's completely incorrect, okay? And because of this, a lot of people use it incorrectly in situations where you don't need it, or some people use the incorrect grammar. So avoid it unless you know how to use it. If you don't know how to use it, remember, guys, you can watch videos about it here on our channel, or you can take a class with me on Cambly. I give classes specifically focusing on grammar, and I love explaining how to use the present perfect. But don't use it if you don't need to. Don't overuse it. Okay? So back to our questions and our participations. I have learned all the time. No. I am doing gym when my phone rings. No. I have never been to the UK before. last summer vacation. Summer, that's better. Muzamil says, I have finished my work. Exactly. So the formula for the present perfect is subject, auxiliary, verb, and then the object. So subject, auxiliary verb, then the verb, then the object. In the present perfect, the auxiliary verb is the present form of have, and in the past perfect, it's the past form of have. That is the auxiliary, that is not the main verb, okay? So I would say, I have, and then I would conjugate my verb, my real verb, in the past participle, okay? For example, I have eaten cake. I have ran a marathon. I have worked in Cambly for 5 years, for example. That was good. I have cooked food. Mhm. That's the formula for the present perfect. But again, you guys, don't think it's better. Don't think it's ideal. Don't use it if you don't know how to use it. Okay? The clock has just struck 12. Very good, you guys. Now, Desi was asking, to feel is a stative verb, but I read that it is correct to use it in both continuous and not. I am feeling angry versus I feel angry. Is this true? So, Desi, I don't know where you're reading this. You can use any verb in any tense whenever you want. Okay? The important distinction is the context. Okay? So, any verb, stative or not, you can use it in the simple present, in the past participle, in the present continuous, in any conjugation that you like. Any verb can go with any conjugation. The important thing is to define the context, right? So, for example, if you say, I am feeling angry, the only correct context is the present continuous. Rather, you're saying, I am feeling angry. That's present continuous, right? I am feeling angry. You're using the present continuous. So, the only correct context, if it is happening right now, that is the only right way to use the present continuous in a simple sentence. You can use the present continuous to express future plans, but then you would need to specify time. So it's a little bit different. So the only way that you can really use the present continuous correctly is to describe things that are happening now. I am speaking. I am teaching. You are listening. You are watching. We are waiting. Something that is happening now, present continuous. If not, don't use it. Again, remember, you have to choose the tense according to the context, okay? But you can conjugate any verb in any context. So, the form of the verb used for action or events that have been completed or have happened in a period of time up to now. Very good. That is indeed the present perfect. Now, speaking of all those things, we also want to consider Western says, I have been studying in Cambly for some months. That's not exactly the present perfect. That is the present perfect continuous, which is a little bit more complicated. You said it correctly. So if you want to use that, that's great. But be careful because it is, it does have more elements. It is a little bit more complex. Now, speaking of all the verbs and everything, you guys, we're going back to regular and irregular verbs. So many people forget, or rather, not only verbs, but words in general. A lot of people forget irregular nouns, irregular adjectives, comparatives. So you really have to remember regular or irregular. This week, for example, one of my students said that they have a daughter, and they were saying, "Oh, I took her to a class so she can play with the children's." That's incorrect. Why is that incorrect, you guys? She is going to play with the children's. Why is that incorrect? Desi, you're very welcome. Also, guys, remember, any other questions? Shoot them. Let me know so that we can solve them and we can help. So the phrase "she is playing with children's" or "she's going to play with children's," is that correct or incorrect? What do you think, guys? Samir says in the past. Desi says incorrect. Why? Why though? Why is it incorrect? Muharrem says correct. Children is incorrect, says Desi. Carolyn says incorrect. She'll play with the kids, says Carolyn. Eva says incorrect. Okay, so I see some people saying yes, some people saying no. All right, so the original phrase that my student said was, she is playing or she is going to play with the children's. Okay, she is going to play with the children's or she is playing with the children's. Okay. Antonio also says incorrect. So the solution, guys, is that sentence is incorrect. Very incorrect. Super wrong. And it's because of a very simple word. It's a very basic word, actually. It's a beginner level word, child or children, right? Children is the correct plural form. Child is an irregular noun. So we don't say childs, or we don't say, and obviously, because we don't say childs, the other plural form, children, is already in the plural. We do not need to say children's. Okay, so as some of you were saying, it would be child in the singular, children in the plural. That is an irregular noun, right? Can you guys give me an example of some other irregular nouns or verbs or adjectives or anything you like? That's why I have it here. A lot of people forget some of the basic regular and irregulars, right? And it's really important to remember them. Desi says goose and geese. Very good. Okay. Muzamil says person, people. Super important. Some people still say persons. And that is so wrong. So no, people. Desi says tooth and teeth. Exactly. Tooth. Have one tooth and then multiple teeth. Right. Farjana says children's can't be used because children itself is plural. Excellent. Yes, that's the idea. So good. You guys, I think you can understand that using the correct form of a plural or a singular, whether it's a noun or a regular verb, it's super important. All right. So always remember, keep a list, keep a notebook of all the irregular and regular nouns, verbs, adjectives, whatever you need, so you always remember them. For example, break is a good example of an irregular verb. We don't say, so break is the simple form, but the past is not breaked, it's broke, okay? And of course, the participle broken. Very good, Antonio. Desi also says sheep, sheep, no change, exactly. We can also say fish, fish. It can also be singular or plural. So good. So guys, remember that. And we're going to go on to something also kind of confusing for some students. Or not confusing, but again, that a lot of students misinterpret. That is the passive and the active voices. What does that mean? What is the passive and the active voice, you guys? Do any of you remember? Do you any? Kalipan says, oh, not this. Yes, it can be difficult, right? But how do we use the passive and the active voice? Kalipan says, I'm bad at this. Don't worry, Kalipan. We're here to help. So what would the passive and active voices be? Can anybody give me an example? So Desi says, Andrew bought 2 beers. That's an active voice. Correct. Muharrem says, person, say, and do. It is active. Okay, I think I understand. I think that's pretty close. Yes, if a person does it or if a person says it, it's probably active. So the active voice is when the subject of the sentence is clearly and explicitly doing the action, right? If I say I run, I am the subject of the sentence and I'm doing the action, okay? So Andrew bought 2 beers, very good, active. Simon says the glass was broken when we woke up, not waked up, when we woke up in the morning. Now, Desi also says 2 beers were bought by Andrew. That's the passive voice. Good. So the passive voice is when the sentence is describing a subject as having received an action, not doing the action. Passive voice is usually described with a verb to be and a participle adjective. Okay. So subject, verb to be, participle adjective. For example, the house was painted. The beers were bought. We could say the chicken was cooked, right? The teacher was, graduated or something like that. The student was graduated, or we could say the teacher was communicated information by the principal. Mm-hmm. So again, it's a very simple distinction. Active voice is when the subject is doing the action explicitly in the sentence, and then the passive voice is when the subject is receiving the action. Okay. But the structure, this is super, super, super important, you guys. So important. The structure, the grammatical structure of the clause is the same. Okay. It's still SVO. SVO is for everything. We always use SVO, and we need to say it exactly in that way. Okay. Passive voice emphasizes the person or object receiving the action. Active voice emphasizes the person or object performing the action. Very good, Erica. It's exactly that. Excellent. Antonio Colosi says, I read the newspaper. Active voice. Very good. Perjana says, active. For example, I am learning music, and passive music is being learned by me. Pretty good. Yeah. That's awesome. Kalipan says, thankfully, I passed my grade 11 English, which came up with these. I got an A grade. Awesome, Kalipan. Congratulations. So remember, passive and active voice. The grammar doesn't change. The structure doesn't change. It just rearranges the emphasis or the focus of the sentence, okay? But the grammar, SVO, is the same. Plurals are the same. The pronouns are the same. The parts of speech or the word types are the same. And that's, again, why people get it so confused, because they think passive voice is a different type of grammar, and it isn't, okay? And it's not a different verb tense. So remember, passive and active, they all follow the same grammar rules. And remember, do not use it more than you need to. Remember that speaking in a passive or active voice or anything like that, or the past perfect, present perfect, is not going to make you sound better. This is the main thing that I want to emphasize always. Do not use difficult, complicated grammar things because you think they're going to make you sound better. They won't. Okay. Timer says, I get my hair cut. Is it passive in this context? No, that's active, because I go, I receive, I get. If you said my hair was cut, that would be passive, right? Desi says, a new museum has been built. Personal passive voice. The agent is not mentioned. Good. In active voice, Kibar asks, in the active voice, the subject acts, while in passive voice, the subject is acted upon. Yes, Kibar. Divya says, a letter was written by him. Correct, also. Very good. So, guys, one of the last things I want to remind you of is homophones. In English, there are a lot of homophones, like there, and there. You could write them. There, and there. One of them is I forgot the word. contraction. That's the word. One of them is a contraction between a subject and the verb. There, they are. The other one is, it can be a lot of things. It could be a subject, it can be a determiner, it can be a lot of things. There, right? Usually refers to a place. And there is a possessive adjective. Okay. The newspaper is being read by me, says Antonio. Very good. Excellent. So homophones exist in English, and they're really common. I think in other languages they're not as common, but in English they are super, super, super common. So you have to be aware of them, especially for the basic words like there, and there. Muzamil, here and hair are not homophones. They do not sound the same. The first word you wrote is here, meaning place. This is hair, right? Hair and hair are homophones. Kibar says two, good. To, the number two, to the determiner or the direction or the preposition, and to the adverbial modifier of too much. So good, correct. So again, as I was saying, there are a lot of homophones in English, and they can be very confusing. They change the meaning, and the only way to distinguish them effectively is to read them in context, or to say them in context. But when you write it, it's super important to write the correct one. If you're not sure, check. Please always check. You can Google it. You can use a dictionary. Do not use a translator. They are not reliable. Use a dictionary, okay? And make sure what you're saying is what you want to say. Right, ant and ant, Kalipan, that's good, but that only applies in American English, actually, North American English dialects. In South Africa, for example, or in the British Isles, in the UK, they pronounce it differently. Hiloko says bad and but. No, those are not homophones. One is bad, the other one is but. Very different. Emil says meat and meat. Yes, meat, the flesh, the food, the animal that we eat, and meet is to see someone, right? So very good. Kibar says buy, and buy. Very good, very, very good. To buy, to purchase something, buy the preposition next to, or buy like goodbye. Erva says though and tough. No, Erva, those are not homophones. They are spelled similarly, but they are not homophones. By the way, the word for words that are written the same but mean different things are homographs. They also exist in English, although they are slightly less common. For example, read and read are homographs, right? So they are spelled the same, but they are read differently. Okay. Muzamilu says I, the subject pronoun, and I. Very good. Emil says see and see. See the ocean, and see like see with your eyes. Very good. Book reader says no and no. Very good. To know something, to be aware of something, and then the negative, no. Good, very good. Kibar says write and write. Of course, the verb write, like with a pencil or a pen, W-R-I-T-E, and write, like correct. Hiloko, so and saw, also not homophones, my friend. Some people are getting confused. Homophones are not words that are a little bit similar. Homophones are words that sound exactly the same, and usually because their spelling rules produce the same diphthong, right? So and saw are not homophones. So Divyesh says she, see, and see. The first one is wrong. The other two are correct. Erva says 4 and 4. Very good. For the number and for like a direction. Very good. Muzamil says flour and flour. Of course, the food, the white powder that we use to make bread, that's flour. And also the plants that are beautiful, those are flowers. Emil says sun and sun, the sun in the sky, and my son, for example, my child, of course. Very good. So, Kalipan says oral and oral. That's a funny one. I think that would be a homophone for most dialects, but in my dialect, oral I would say oral. So I would curve because I'm from New York. So I would say or instead of o, right? So the first one I would say oral, and the other one I would say oral, like flat. But that's just me. That's just because I'm from New York. Like I said, I think that for most people, oral and oral would be homophones, as you could probably notice that they are very similar anyway. So very good. Antonio, thing and think are absolutely not homophones. They are very different. They are not even spelled the same. They make very different sounds. Thing and think. You do not eliminate sounds in English. We never eliminate or we never make them disappear just for no reason, especially if they're at the end. Okay? So be careful with that. Clothes and clothes. I don't pronounce them differently, Summer. They are similar. A lot of dialects would pronounce them very similar, but I don't pronounce them similar. Again, probably because I'm from New York. All right. So I actually emphasize the v in clothes and clothes. I pronounce like a lingual fricative, like a Z. Clothes. Kibar says bear, beer, bear. So number 1, Kibar, and number 3 are correct. Bear and bear. Bear is uncovered or naked, and bear is the animal. Good. But beer is not. All right. Beer and bear sound differently. Divier says plain and plain. Very good. Farjana says nose and nose. So my nose and he knows. Book reader says a very interesting one. So that can either be lead or lead, right? Lead, L-E-E-A-D, is a good example of a homograph because lead with a flat E, lead is the material, the toxic, I think it's a metal, the toxic metal, or it could also be read correctly as lead. So even though they have the same spelling, they have 2 different pronunciations. So that is a good example of a homograph. Now, lead, the material, with the past of lead, lead, are homophones. So that's a great example. Great example. So, guys, those are quite a lot of homophones. Very good, you guys. Practice them, read them, review them, and last but not least, I want to remind you cognates, okay? We don't really need to review a list of cognates because it really depends on what language you speak originally. Cognates are words that are similar in sound or in etymology to English. Sometimes they are true cognates and sometimes they are false cognates, meaning that even though they sound similar or that they have a similar meaning, they are not exactly used in the same way in English. So you always want to be careful with cognates. Right? Like I said, it depends on what language you speak. Portuguese and Spanish have a lot of false cognates, right? For example, people say contract. That is not correct. The correct verb is hire, or usually it's correct. What else? For example, a lot of people say principal, not very frequently used. The most frequently used adjective is main. What else? People say also. What's another good one? I already said contract, hire. A lot of people do it with like technological vocabulary. They will just directly transport it and it's not precise, right? Right, Desi. Right, exactly. There, or that's the one I was thinking of. For example, in Spanish, we have embarazar, which is to make someone pregnant, and it sounds like embarrassed. So a lot of people confuse it, but it's not the same. Molestar sounds like molest, which is a crime, to assault someone. But in Portuguese, molestar, and in Spanish, molestar means just to bother. So even though the words are very similar, they do not have the same meaning. So always be aware of cognates. Always be careful when you use them, and make sure that if you are going to use them, you know the meaning 100%. Right? So guys, like I was saying, This is one of the last videos that we're going to do in this modality, at least. So we're probably not going to see each other again on a Cambly Live for a good amount of time, at least not me. I'm sorry to say goodbye to you guys, but it has been a huge pleasure. Remember that I am open to new students. You can look for me. You can look for my profile on Cambly. You can just look for my name if you want to take classes with me, because we're going to focus now on other types of content. All right. So it is a farewell. It is not a definitive goodbye, because like I said, you guys, you can still see me, you can still take my classes, you can still watch my other videos, and maybe in the future we're going to resume this type of content or these types of series. It really depends on the response we get and the type of, let's say, overall impact that we have with our content. So up until now, it has been great. I have felt very welcome, very, very, very welcomed by all of you guys. I love doing these. I wish I could do more, but for now, this is the last time we're going to have one of these. Okay. So guys, thank you so very much. Thank you for everything. Thank you for your participations. Thank you for watching. Remember that if you want to take a class with me, you can just look for my name and I'll pop up on the platform. All right. So take care, you guys. I hope to see you very soon. I hope to see you in my class, and we'll see each other again eventually, one way or another. All right. Keep practicing. Keep these tips in mind, and we'll see each other hopefully very, very soon. All right. So take care, you guys. Take care. Thank you so much, Kalipan. Thank you, Erva. Thank you, Esther. Thank you, Loco. Thank you, Damaris. Erva also. Thank you for your participation. Kalipan, thank you so much also for your support. Thank you. Thank you to everyone. Thank you. Desi. No, I'm not quitting. We're just not making this type of videos for a little while at least. But like I said, you can just look for me. You can send me a message. You can, have a class with me. I think my profile is usually going to be linked in the description. So again, you guys, don't worry. It's not the end of things. It's just not in this type of format. Okay. So hopefully, guys, like I said, hopefully we can see each other soon. Maybe other videos, maybe other programs, maybe other classes. We'll think of something. All right. And in the meantime, take care. Keep studying. Keep reviewing the videos. Keep checking them out, sharing them with your friends. And I hope to see you soon. Like I said, if you want to take a class with me, just search for me and I'll pop up. All right. So I hope to see you guys there. Thank you for everything. Thank you. Thank you so, so much. Okay. Take care of you guys. Bye-bye.